that noise, those tones, so help encourage me to lend my voice to another broadcast. After all, this is a Michael Miller Pilates Facebook Live broadcast. See, it's not Facebook, it's YouTube. And for more than a year, I've been primarily broadcasting on Facebook. And I'm leaning more into doing it on YouTube for a lot of reasons I've already talked about. Okay, this is Michael Miller Pilates. Out to you, it's Michael Miller Pilates YouTube live video broadcast. Out to you because you're watching. And it's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, core and core students, and anyone interested in surviving as a Pilates instructor, because that's been the point of the broadcast, is to extend my profession of Pilates as a brand, and to help you understand that brand, that point of view, that kind of Pilates, to help you survive as a Pilates instructor. So, because it unnerves me to speak to such a bigger audience and such an unfiltered audience as the one that is available in the YouTube world, if you're new to my broadcasts, you can either look at a sporadic number of older ones that are on YouTube, and most of my current work over the last year and a half has been on Facebook and is available under the recordings I made live on Facebook. So now there's three things, okay, for today. One is how to learn Michael Miller Pilates. The second is, as a Pilates instructor, what matters? What matters? As a Pilates instructor, what matters? And then number three, in the last one of my titles today, is this, that in 1,000 years, it will still be hundreds, roll up, roll over, ... push-ups. So that's my third one. In 100 years, it will still be hundreds, roll up, roll over, ... push-ups. Right? And I said 100 years. I wrote 1,000 years. In 100,000 years, it would still be that sequence within the physics that we're talking about. Change the physics and it might change the pattern, but maybe not. So the best way to learn about Michael Miller Pilates is to listen. And Facebook Live has the bulk of my most recent work. There's YouTube that you have available to you. I would go to hermit.com and look up what's new, because that's my blog. And I'd go way back in my blog and then come forward through it, because that's a good way, especially visually, to get an appreciation for the Michael Miller Pilates view of things. So my Facebook Live recorded broadcasts, my blog, my website is a virtual library of all the exercises in lists and pictures and a lot of video. And you can always compare whatever else you're learning to that to see how close it is to what I consider to be the original work of Joe, with only stuff that fits in by virtue of fitting into the ideal that exists within the original work of Joe. And that's If it doesn't fit or doesn't belong, I don't know what to tell you. How to learn Michael Miller Pilates. I wrote a book on Kindle, on Amazon, The Elements of Pilates, and the Michael Miller point of view. Why would you ever want to learn about Michael Miller Pilates? Because it's a unique point of view of Pilates. And it's unique, which means one of a kind. It's not very unique. It is unique. It's one of a kind in that it takes its legitimacy and authority sensationally straight from Joe's original work. Meaning, especially for me and my point of view, his definition, his promise, and his sequence. I encourage you to learn what Michael Miller Pilates means, because it's not like it's very deep. But you have to go around the merry-go-round a few times and hear it, spaced repetition. Anybody in the learning world knows you have to sort of hear something like 7 or 8 times with intervals in between to really sort of get something. And so I encourage you, if you don't already, have a keen sense of what Michael Miller Pilates is and how to explain it to other people, because other people need to hear it. And they need to hear it because they're trying to make sense of what so far is attractive in Pilates, but doesn't really make enough sense to bring about a sense of calm from the first wave of the tsunami passion of Pilates. You can hide in saying, well, it's just our way of looking at it, or it's just our lineage that matters. But I fear that the tsunami of the passion has already swept that away as an issue in terms of where people are going to find higher ground. Of course, the more people they talk to or learn from that actually knew Joe and worked with Joe, that's good. And the more they learn from people that learn from Joe that aren't here anymore, that's good. Some would argue that's not as good, of course. And so there's all these levels of what matters, and in terms of legitimacy and authority. You know, did you know Joe? Did you work with Joe? And then who did you work with that worked with Joe? And how many people did you work with that worked with Joe? You know, ad nauseum. And in all of that, it's a struggle to find confidence in what you know and who you are as a Pilates instructor when there's so much expression of Pilates going on. More so now than ever before, right? So. And don't be fooled. Actually, I would tell you, see, you can learn Michael Miller Pilates more on your own research from what exists out there in words and pictures and film that I created. You can get to know Pilates better directly that way than by listening to anybody that says they knew me. And I don't know how Joe would feel about this in his teachings, but when it comes to me and my teachings, I think I'm teaching an ideal to everyone I teach. Meaning I think I teach the same thing to everyone. And I'm reaching for the same goal with everyone. How it comes out is a totally creative exploration between my student or group and me, right? There's all of that uniqueness, and yet I think I'm delivering a white light to someone, and when they take it on, it's like they have their own color to it. I think the closer it is to Joe's original work, the better off we all are, because, in my opinion, Joe's original work makes a statement of its own. It points to an experience, it points to a sequence or a choreography in pursuit of that experience, or that experience is just the necessary consequence of, and so, all right, I'm getting to number 2 in a second, but hold on. A necessary consequence of, so I hate, I should have this just memorized, but maybe in having it memorized, you'd think I was just making it up even worse. But in Joe's book, Return to Life Through Contrology, he says, always keep your mind wholly concentrated on the purpose of the exercises as you perform them. Always keep your mind wholly concentrated on the purpose of the exercises as you perform them. He goes on to say, this is vitally important in order for you to gain the results sought. Otherwise, there would be no valid reason for your interest in contrology. I apologize to Joe for all that I've made of Pilates that probably was off the mark that he sets right there. In his saying that, your mind wholly concentrated on the purpose of the exercises as you perform them. And unless that's the case, you've got no valid reason for your interest in contrology. Isn't that amazing? So maybe this doesn't mean Pilates. Maybe Pilates has evolved into the 10,000 things, and now is whatever it's made of by whomever makes of it what they make. And that's okay with me. That's why I put a box around Michael Miller Pilates and say, this brand of Pilates looks a particular way at Joe's original work. And I encourage you to learn that point of view, because I think it will help you survive as a Pilates instructor. And so, learn Michael Miller Pilates because it's very simple to grasp and ultimately get a connection to something that you can feel for yourself and understand that that's your target. So number two, excuse me, that's my chair. Number 2 is this title. As a Pilates instructor, what matters? As a Pilates instructor, what matters? Hold on. Isn't it amazing how many things come to mind? At least it does, and it did for me, and it has for me ever since I came up with this question to myself that I'm sharing with you now about when I started out with, in Pilates, what matters? And man, that was just such a sweeping question that I realized that the point of my broadcast is to survive as a Pilates instructor. And so it helped me to say, as a Pilates instructor, what matters? I think it really helps to know what you're doing. And if you don't know, if you don't know what you're doing, see, in another way of saying it is, I think it really helps if you have confidence in what you're doing as a Pilates instructor. So what I'm saying first off, it barely matters what you do if you have confidence in what you're doing. And of course, for me, as always, safety comes rushing in like a wind of awareness and says, yeah, you better be careful. Which was like second on my list of what matters. It's like, okay, confidence really helps a lot. No matter what, it's nice to be confident. And in interacting with students who are working their way through teacher training programs, the obvious commodity being sought is the confidence that comes from somewhere that allows you to hold yourself out as a Pilates instructor, right? Whatever the content is, whatever the school, whatever the meaning, whatever the interpretation, whatever the generation, whatever the language, whatever the country, whatever the stage of indoctrination and propaganda that Pilates is sweeping the world in. See, that's that first wave, that tsunami of Pilates passion. And so, in terms of feeling confident, Steve G gave it to me, and I've given it to everybody else since then. And I'm sure he got it from somebody else, maybe, but maybe not. But I'm saying I got this from somebody, and I've passed it on to everybody along the way, just like I'm passing Michael Miller Pilates on to you now. But the admonition is, when in doubt, leave it out. As an instructor, when in doubt, just leave it out. You don't need to go there. When in doubt, leave it out. And if you haven't learned enough options to leave it out and go to something else, then learn some more content, some more exercises, some more things to do within the arena of pursuing the Pilates movement. It can be anything. Balls, bands, springs, therapeutics, balance, right? But in terms of being an instructor and surviving a 55-minute session, it can be tough in the beginning. I can remember my beginning when it seems like everything you have to teach goes by in the first 15 minutes. And then you have all this time left and what to do with it. I know. The better you get, the deeper you get, the less time you have to cover so much of what you want to cover. Which also brings you back to the fact that time, right, is like a funnel. And you can only get so much through at once, which brings it to the moment, right? And if all you're trying to do is have fun, and the only idea of Pilates is to be present in the moment, when in doubt, leave it out. And And then I back that up with, in terms of advice instructionally, so you've left it out and you've moved on, right? But something nags at you to come back and try that exercise that you left out. So that my point is that if you've left it out and it won't let go, then come back and explore carefully. And what does carefully mean? Well, limited range, limited load, limited tempo, all those kinds of possibilities. And see, so to survive as a Pilates instructor, for all of the Michael Miller Pilates leaning on science and everything, my gosh, it's totally an intuitive world. As an instructor, it's all to intuition that manifests itself in the moment as the instructor that you're participating as, right? And the wrap-up story I have to share with you about when in doubt, leave it out, is that one time I wasn't sure about it. I had doubt. I could feel and I wasn't sure whether that was a thing to do or not. So I let it go, and the student didn't know, of course. But I let it go, and we went on to something else. And yet, I came back to, and it seemed like I wanted my student to engage in that dynamic, in that way, of that exercise, right? And so I came back to it, and in approaching it and getting set up to do it, I had the insight, the intuition about where I really wanted to go next. That wasn't the exercise that I had doubt about. So this is not mine, but a definition I share a lot is success is the continual progression toward a worthy goal. And you're after the worthy goal of learning the Pilates choreography, having fun, getting lost in the moment from concentrating on the purpose of what you're doing. There's nothing better. I mean, there's just nothing better. And of course, I guess you leave it out because of safety. And I would remark here that the paradox in Pilates is that you go deeper into center in order to get more range away from that center. Excuse me. Rather than just reaching out, and your extremities, your limitations, your end range, that's the word I was looking for. It's about working within a controlled range, and from that controlled range, taking deeper control within your body, the way you engage it. And of course, I can only see a core new tension engagement because I'm wearing blinders on, right? But really they're more like shades, and they're shades, they're like polarized lenses. So another big thing that matters as a Pilates instructor, practically speaking, to me is tension. Tension. See, I reach down here, I find a rubber band, and how do I stretch this rubber band? And so, I gotta come this way. And so how do I stretch this rubber band? Well, it's tough to do with just one point. But if you add a second point, right, with 2 points you can make tension. And so I skipped right over the tension that you create in creating the condition of core. So there's tension in a grip, right? Here's where we can go to Indian wrestling, interlocking fingers, and then wrestling at the strength of the wrist to make a sensational point about what the wrist strength is all about, and how strength your grip is part of the strength that you have in your wrists, right? See, the body starts laying flat on the ground before it starts hundreds, at ease, right? And then it goes through this marvelous dance of movement to get to standing, ready to walk away, run away, jump away, fly away, because internally the human being has it all worked out. Body, mind, and spirit completely coordinated. Aware in the moments to react to whatever comes up. And that's Joe's thing, see? Gosh, Joe. I hope that whatever you study in terms of Pilates, that you really lean hard on reaching for Joe's original work, and whatever he wrote, and whatever he took pictures of, and whatever film he made, because it's in there that you can recognize things, or that I recognize things that were insights into the ideal within his expression. And you say, well, what are you talking about? Or let's lay that on the ground, or show me the film. A lot of you have that film where Joe's taking film of a student on the low chair going through a sequence of movements. And the student is about to do one exercise, and the exercises have been running continuously on the film prior to the student looking up at the camera, or the cameraman, and the film cuts. And then where the film picks up is the whole same environment with a different exercise to follow. Now you make of it what you want, but for me, what was missing at the cut was the progression of pattern of flexion, extension, side bending, rotation, and torsion. The student was about to do an exercise that was out of that pattern. And when the film came on again, the progressive pattern that's consistent throughout all the rest of Joe's original work came on the screen, meaning the exercise in pattern was consistent. And to me, my copy of that film was old enough to think that what I was looking at was either an original splice or just the camera shut off and the camera turned on. Okay? In any event, the pattern that you see through his students' exercises is consistent with everything else, and it was telling to me that the cut happened and that where the next exercise picked off was consistent with where he was in that sequence, that pattern of movement. And where do you get from that as a Pilates instructor? You get the confidence of knowing that this mattered to Joe. In his original film, he kept his pattern of flexion, extension, side bending, rotation, and torsion consistent. And easily, that's the one part of explaining Pilates to an aspiring instructor that is easy to grasp, I think that is most implementable, that has given them more confidence in what they're doing. See? Because if you start with an exercise, probably flexion is a good idea. Because flexion is going toward the center, it's concentric, but it's going against the grain of the evolution of life expressing itself. So getting a grip, right, is a tension all its own. And having a grip, accomplishing the involution of spiral, is a great thing to teach. So that a person understands that the same thing that they have as a grip in their hands is what they're seeking to accomplish with the engagement of the musculature of their hips, at their hips, around their hips, their core, their powerhouse. The engagement of musculature to accomplish the grip is the condition of core. And see, the whole thing about tension matters a lot. Why? Because alignment matters a lot. You go from lying on your back to standing up straight. You go from at ease to the load of your body, the weight of your body on your feet. That you not only have to balance, but hold erect and walk and sit and stand and do all the other things required of a human being. Pilates to me is on a pedestal all its own because it so distinctively and so purely represents the conditioning the human body is required to accomplish to get the control you're after. It's a study of control, controlology. And in the Michael Miller world of Pilates, you actually do use your brain, you use your mind to acknowledge gosh, I don't know, to find out if there's anything even to acknowledge. But see, Joe writes, wholly concentrated on the purpose of the exercise. Hello? You know, what is the purpose? And is the purpose just a general administration of principles? No, it can't be that way. I mean, that's good at some level. That's good at some level, but if you're really climbing to higher ground and you're really looking for what makes Pilates, then you'll at least want to understand the Michael Miller Pilates point of view so you can defend yourself from others who are aware of that point of view as well. So the last two things on as a Pilates instructor, what matters? As a Pilates instructor, what matters? Well, we talked about confidence, and we talked about safety, and when in doubt, leave it out. And we talked about tension, just barely a little bit, really. Tension is a good thing. And you are a master administrator or initiator of tension in the body. And the cueing of that tension happens in time, and the timing of your delivery, the timing of your cues, has a serious impact on the quality of engagement that your student has in the effort you're cueing them to make, right? Looking for alignment and looking for whole body. Those two sort of came at the end of my comments about what matters as a Pilates instructor. And of course you have to be color coordinated, and it has to be a good hair day, and everything else has to be just perfect to put you in your perfect place to be an instructor. But we know, you know, I know, that the more you engage as a Pilates instructor, the more it takes you into listening, right? Which somewhere I thought was on my list, but never made it there. Listening. Oh. In Michael Miller Pilates, without listening, it's not Pilates. Okay? Now, you could say that in Joe's words. It's not Pilates if you're not fully concentrated on the purpose of the exercise. So that assumes there's a purpose, that you know what that purpose is, and that your concentration is fully on that purpose. Now, as much as concentration, it seems to me, it feels to me, the word is associated more with thinking than with feeling. The feeling or the listening, the observing, the concentrating is the key part. That without that, you know, you're missing the point. There's no valid reason for you to be interested in your pursuit of contrology if you're not wholly concentrated on the purpose of each exercise as you perform it. Right? So much gets made out of Pilates, other than that key aspect, as though it's an, oh yeah, that's right, but then there's all this other stuff that matters more or better because of. And the greatest thing about the Pilates method is that it's a complete message delivered by its creator to every human being. And that the higher ground you get to on the Pilates mountain, all you really find are students. I'd say because ultimately we're all in search of the ideal, right? Now your version of an ideal is not my version of an ideal, but there's so much to build on with what Joe delivered into our laps with his book, Return to Life Through Contrology. And the title of his book is no joke, it's no laughing matter. It's not like it's not thought out. Return to life. See? And that can also mean living. And so, living is one thing, you're alive or you're dead. But life itself happens in the world where there's stuff that isn't alive. And it's foregone expectancy that nobody gets out alive because time goes on and people don't live long enough to be immortal, as far as I know, right? Why am I telling you that? Mind and whole body. Oh, well, for whatever reason, we get to number 3, which is in 1,000 years. In 1,000 years, it will still be hundreds, roll up, roll over, dot, 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 push-ups. I think I've said that already before in this broadcast. Oh, because I went through the titles. And at least I showed that I got to the last thing in my list today. I think part of growing as a Pilates instructor has been for me to not only develop, to learn enough to have enough confidence, to be safe and have fun and get paid for it. Because I think there's an idea within Joe's original work, and that his choreography makes a fundamental statement about the fact of the physics of the body and the exercises that occur in the order that they occur in. You know, in yoga, they have this exercise sequence called salute to the sun, right? And I don't ever mean to mix up one modality with another, but in that modality of yoga, when they have a sequence of movements where they're having a salute to the sun, right? The Pilates mat sequence, the Pilates choreography makes a point, and that point, it's like a salute to the sun, but this is a salute to physics. And you might say it's a salute to reality, but who knows what reality is? But at least from my point of view, Joe's method is a salute to the world we find ourselves in as human beings, with the capacities that we have in body, mind, and spirit. And that's being in your body, thinking and listening, or observing, or concentrating. Any of those words you want to use for your attention present, right? And that's the issue. And so it doesn't matter what word you call it. It doesn't matter what you interpret it as being, or where it comes from, or what its essence is. You can enjoy philosophical discussions about that forever. But to survive as a Pilates instructor, all you really have to have a grip on is the awareness of what you're after and how to accomplish it. Okay? And you know that, right? You can say, well, according to him, I know what I'm after, and according to him, I know how to hit it. So according to him, what you're after is what? The complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit. How do you hit it? Well, you have to press the flow to find the fusion of those three things, body, mind, and spirit. Because if you lollygag around, the mind will occupy all the space. It's when the mind has to actually pay attention, and that's why you press the flow to grab the attention. And then you try not to let go of that attention until they wave goodbye. Right? Okay. So, I had my licensed affiliate who has studios in both Sicily and Argentina. Cecilia. Cecilia was kind enough to share this YouTube video with, or in the arena of Facebook. So I'll be interested to see if the video I made yesterday has any views based on the generosity of Cecilia sharing the link to this that I sent to Facebook. So Facebook didn't get to watch live, is my point. But I forwarded, so this is to you as an instructor in how do I organize my broadcast efforts. There's no titles to type out, but write out. You just go live on YouTube and stop when you're done. Send it, then that's a file. And then I had to go on my laptop to actually find where that file was. Not sure directly how to find that on my YouTube site. But I do find it, and once I find it, I share it to Facebook. And part of me says it's the right place to type in the titles. But the other part of me says, why bother? And just make reference to it, and if someone's interested, they'll go figure it out for themselves. And here you are, having figured it out for yourself. So it was fun talking about how to learn MMP, Michael Miller Pilates. I do encourage you to become, if you're not already, a Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliate, because it gives you access, limited access, to the use of my trademark, which is a clear indication that shows that you know. Now, what do you know? Yeah, you know that Michael Miller was this character or caricature or whatever as a human being. Demonized by some, admired by others, whatever, as a human being. You know, I'm encouraging you to get past the messenger. And one of the best ways to do that is to make a recording that you can watch from wherever you are and determine for yourself, hopefully, where you see me speaking my truth, and to some extent it connects with yours. And to whatever extent it does, it doesn't matter that I pointed it out to you. But in the tsunami of Pilates passion, and in trying to find peace of mind and a sense of identity to Pilates that will support your hope for peace, my profession, of course, is that my brand of Pilates is at least one standard to have at your formal affiliation. What affiliations do you matter? Oh man. Not many, right? I'm so blessed that you're watching because I met you so long ago. You were a complete tour de force in your own right, in your own way. And it was such a privilege working with you to help me share my point of view of Pilates to others that didn't speak the language that I spoke and did speak, your native language. Precious, precious, precious. Hopefully we made an impact in every opportunity where I got to work with you, and you got to take what I said in one language and draw it into another. That makes such a difference. That's such a huge difference. And to this day, I hope that anything you see of mine that you like in one language, you feel free to express again in another language. If you want to join the group of mathematicians that I hope are working on a mathematical expression of core tension, well, they can help in that brain pool. All right. That matters. Have fun. Be present. Be safe. And be yourself. You know. Make your own content. Make your own recordings of whatever, and you don't have to be in front of the camera. Of you talking, of you writing, of you moving. Make your own content as a means to survive as a Pilates instructor. Right? Share ownership. Teach and record it, and let someone else do what they want with it, but you retain right to do whatever you want with it as well. Because eventually, it seems to me, perhaps it's my huge failures at doing recording that finally tempered my interest in making them of movement by instruction of other bodies. For now, what I hope you take away is that my conclusion is the best way I can make my profession, the best way I can fulfill my duty is to share my joy, and that's of Pilates through my view of it. And if I can share that view of it with you on a YouTube video that gets saved on YouTube like forever, right? If and when we ever connect in this moment in me making the broadcast and in you listening to it, we make Pilates stronger, I think. And to the extent that Pilates has any ideal within it, the ideal itself will defend itself, as it already does. And the clearer we illuminate the ideal within it for what it is, and then make whatever we want out of it from there, doesn't matter. Just acknowledge the fact of the physics and see perhaps Pilates was important enough to get to core tension, because core tension applies to every body. It's a biological, it's a biodynamic thing for how the body creates dynamics to move through space. And you are responsible for that more than me, because all I did was respond to my need to know, my wanting to understand better the sensation that I got. See, that's the distinction. Wanting to know better is one thing, but wanting to really understand the sensation that you get or can get when you do Pilates, that's a big chew. All right. Comment on this if you wish. The best comment you can make is anything that I said in here that you thought might be worthy to make it into a text, and especially if you add the time frame in which it happens, then you merely refine the buoy of light that I tried to set up by allowing you to point to an area of time in which that light was brightest for you. It happens out there if you don't know that. In terms of go look here at this video and at this time frame is what I was talking about. Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Like a compass needle getting distorted. The bowls and the notes and sonics and harmonics distorted the needle for me a little bit, and what I was fascinated with was, it's like, where does passion come from? And wherever that comes from, straighten out my needle back to just be willing to, over and over again in this merry-go-round, repeat for you my view. Two things. It's a view of Pilates, and it's a view of body dynamics. It's pointing to core new tension that nobody else does or has or measured. Science really hasn't caught up to analyzing it yet. But just because it hasn't doesn't mean it's not real. Just like me saying, no, I didn't want to participate in a study to prove that Pilates works. Because as an instructor, I know it works, and I don't need to make proof of it in order to earn my living as an instructor. Especially if you're as good of an instructor as you can be. Right? It's been an honor to get, if I do know you, of course I do, but it's been an honor to know you, even to just presume the broadcast, right? Buy stuff. Buy stuff. Go to Zazzle.com and buy a t-shirt. Order it larger. And go to Amazon and get the original. There's just a handful of those left. And I'd much rather you had it than what happened to most of them. When I moved, I threw away most of them. See, so it became a limited edition overnight. Stickers of Cornu. To me, these are so fun to hand out. This is the dime version, and this is the nickel version. Only because, in terms of size, it seems that the smaller one has somehow more appeal than the larger one. Magnets. Magnets. You want a magnet? Upfronts. When you're in the shoe business, you call those upfronts, like socks and shoelaces and shoe polish. I sell you, or try to sell you, a pair of shoes that you can walk right out, that you have walked right out of the store with, right? It's that powerful. And especially if you've been around long enough and exposed to enough, and you have a some kind of capacity to see things a certain way, whatever that is. If you've just watched and you don't know about the Michael Miller Pilates convention coming up, it happens every year, same time, same place, to the second. Because it happens on summer solstice at Lost Gulch Overlook, and that's gone on for a lot of years. Most of those I'm there alone, but sometimes other people show up. And this year it's early in the morning on a Thursday. Come in on Wednesday, show up for the moment and the place. Brunch on Friday at the Boulderado, brunch on Thursday at the Boulderado. Go on excursions you've designed on your own to teach or to take, and then report back for a soiree Saturday night. Right? Travel on Sunday. And you may be the only one, of course, because I might not make it till then, and nobody else may show up. And so if that happens, appreciate it, like when nobody shows up for a class that you're there to teach. There were always these times at the North Boulder Rec Center where sun would be coming in through the windows, lighting up the floor, carpeted, where we worked out with mats. And in the beginning, when there was no real class and I had just started, there's always those moments wondering how to take it if nobody shows. Right? And being accepting of it before it turns out one way or the other, I think taught me a lot about having a certain ambivalence. In order to be more in the moment. Maybe because if you're ambivalent, you're not making an effort to attach to anything. You don't care. At least in terms of what you care about. Okay, I'll relate that to instructor and then I'll be off. Talk to her off. If I can remember what I was just going to say. Talk to her off. You can relate to that. Okay. No. Consciousness percolates, and I allow myself to run off the train because a lot of consciousness has a dynamic of rotation in order to come back and take another pass at what you fell off the track with or where you lost direction, right? I was going to say something about being an instructor and oh, yes, okay. Thank you for waiting. If you have an agenda, is another way of saying this and what comes to mind. As an instructor, if you have an agenda, meaning you're not ambivalent, but you have an agenda, to the extent you have an agenda, I think you're vulnerable to risk. And that's why Pilates is so special, because Pilates teaches you how to engage the load of your body without getting it too heavy to jeopardize your ability to maintain your uniform engagement within your body. How to stay within your body without making it into a kink in the hose, right? Right? That's why tension is so important. That's why tension matters so much. Because without tension, with no musculature, you can't move. And the more you know how to move your musculature, the more refined you get in moving your musculature, the more refined your movement gets, right? Someday, when people have nowhere else to look for their entertainment, Michael Miller Pilates will be some source of discernment until it becomes, yeah, everybody knows that because it's obvious. But then it will be the one brand that pointed out the obvious before anybody else took it to heart. And that's the brand of Michael Miller Pilates. All right, so that's what I wanted to see. Live. Live can't live forever. Live can't live forever. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Add 2 and 2. Who is to do this but you? Direct your thinking. And in directing your thinking, don't let your thinking make you the tail of the dog. Direct your thinking. Recognize when you daydream, and recognize when you're really just allowing thinking to plod along on what amuses you sentimentally. It's fun to be mindless. It's fun not to have to think about things. But when thinking is called for, or when thinking isn't called for and it's a distraction, shooting hoops, basketball. I always wanted to be better than I was, and I think I thought too much and let thinking get in the way, right? And so part of directing your thinking is knowing when to turn off your thinking and just make it some kind of organic interaction. Like on every breath in Pilates, you exhale to prepare, you exhale into nothing. And in my way of implementing it, it's not like I do it to the death or overly focused on, but I know that there is exhaling to nothing and waiting at the end of the exhale and listening to the engagement of the inhale, facilitating the engagement of the inhale and letting the rest of your movement come out from the strength of your inhalation that comes from an instinctual impulse to breathe in. Thank you for watching. Christ.